What's up, guys? Zeenigami here, and let's talk about weapons in Genshin Impact. A lot of people are starting off, and a lot of people are asking me which weapon they should be working on. We're going to focus on which 3-star weapons I think you should be focusing on each type of weapon. So we're going to go through all different types: swords, great swords, bows, spears, and whatever the last one I forgot is. And then we're also going to look at the different craftable weapons, because there are 2 craftable weapons of each type, and which one I think you should be picking of those 4-star craftable weapons. So let's start with swords, since everybody's going to have a traveler, and that means everyone's going to have at least one swords user. The swords I recommend using, first of all, the Harbinger of Dawn is an amazingly good sword if you can keep your health topped off. So if you have a consistent healer, if you're good at dodging, or if you have a Geo character on your team, so that way you can keep up shields to keep your health fairly topped off, this weapon will eventually have a 30%, basically 28%, crit rate increase. So you're critting almost a third of the time just with this weapon, with no other increases to your crit rate. It has a 30% additional crit damage on it as well. So this is going to be doing tons and tons and tons of damage with this weapon. Very, very nice. You just have to be able to keep your health fairly high. If you're not able to do that, we got a few other ones. The Skyrider's Sword, I don't recommend. It's not great. It's a very short 15-second increase to your attack after using your burst, which is the big ultimate, so not great. The Fillet Blade is okay. It gives you a burst in damage that's pretty significant, but it's got a very slow cooldown, so don't recommend it as much. Also, pay very close attention to the secondary stats on these weapons. On basically any weapon, the 2 stats you want to see as secondary are Elemental Mastery or crit rate or crit damage. Attack percent is a very weak secondary stat on weapons, actually. Pretty weak. And why attack percent is weak? In short, that attack percent only applies to the weapon's attack and your character's base attack. So, for example, if I look at my characters here, let's look at my Xiangling. My Xiangling's attack it says 1090. And you'd think that if a weapon has 10% base stat, that's like a whole 100 attack. When actually, the 10% base stat only applies to the 409 base stats on my character. So instead of 10% being 100, it's actually only 40. So keep this in mind as we go through. Attack percentage on anything is just not that good, since it only applies to the base stats, not this total attack stat that the character has. So back to swords. The Dark Iron Sword is really nice if you have Kaching or any other electric swordsman that might be coming out at some point, since basically when causing any electric elemental reaction, you're going to get a nice attack boost for 12 seconds, which if you're using an electric type character, should be able to keep this up all the time. Also has that Elemental Mastery secondary, which is very nice to have, like I said earlier. Traveler's Sword, it's terrible. Heals, pathetic. This is a Harbinger of Dawn again. And the Cool Steel, which is nice if you're using a Cryo or a Hydro character. This is something that you're going to see me repeat several times when this type of weapon that we're going to see increases damage against enemies affected by A or B by 24% once fully refined. Excellent weapons to have on a character that is able to keep up these effects. So if you have a Water or a Cryo character, this is a good weapon. I'm going to repeat this on all the weapon types. So the next weapon type we're going to look at is the Catalyst. The Catalyst that I am using right now, which is the Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers. Very nice. Whenever you swap from character that is using this weapon to another one, you get almost a 50% attack increase to that character for 10 seconds. Amazing. You're going to be swapping characters a lot in Genshin Impact. You're going to be getting a ton of attack with this weapon. It does have health as a secondary, which isn't great. If you're using Barbara, you can slap this on Barbara, since Barbara wants to have health, and that works out, since for a lot of people, they're not building Barbara as a very offensive character. So you're probably going to get Barbara. This is a great Barbara weapon specifically. The Magic Guide is also very good. Another great Barbara weapon as an offensive Barbara, because this increases damage to Hydro or Electro. Also, Lisa works great with this weapon. Has Elemental Mastery as a second. Great weapon. Barbara Lisa loves it if you're building them more offensively. And then the Emerald Orb, which also works great for Lisa whenever an electric type... I'm sorry, not an electric type. Whenever... This is not great for Lisa. This one is the one that's good for offensive Barbara. Whenever there is a water elemental reaction, vaporize, electrocharge, frozen, hydro-infused swirl, all water electro reactions... Alright, water elemental reactions increases your attack. Good for offensive Barbara once again. This one, Twin Nephrite, it's bad, increases move speed attack after killing something. A lot of times the hardest fights in this game are fights versus large individual enemies, and you're not going to be able to proc this that often. And what we already said is good. And the Otherworldly Story, it's bad, just gives you a heal. Let's go to bows. Bows, I think by far the best 3-star bow in this game is going to be the Slingshot. Slingshot, it has crit rate, so you're going to be critting like crazy. It's got an effect that's really good. If your normal or aim shot hits a target within 0.3 seconds of being fired, increases your damage by 60%. Otherwise, decrease your damage. Which basically means that whenever you're using a bow character, you want to be within about this far of your enemy. If you're any farther than about this far, you're going to get the damage increase. But if you're within this range, including being right up next to their face, you're going to get a 60% damage increase, which, as we can imagine, is pretty darn good. So if you're in anywhere close to melee range, this weapon is very, very good. Has that amazing crit rate secondary. So by far, I think it's the best 3-star weapon you can use. Better than a lot of the 4-star bows available to us. The Sharpshooter's Oath and the Messenger, I think, are your next best choices if you want to be a longer range aim down sights archer. The Messenger is better if you have worse aim and you're not able to hit aim shots on weak points consistently, because this will do higher amounts of damage, but it has a long 10-second cooldown between the additional damage on the Messenger. If you're able to hit weak points more often, then the Sharpshooter's Oath, which has a consistent 50% damage increase on weak spot, is going to be better. So if you're able to hit weak spots better because your aim's better, go with the Sharpshooter's Oath. If you find that you're missing a lot and you're not hitting those weak spots, the Messenger will do big bursts of damage whenever you do hit those weak spots. The rest of the bows that you have, the recurve bow, are trash. Raven bow, here's the thing. The Raven bow is increased damage against enemies affected by Hydro or Pyro. Who are the characters that can apply that consistently? There's only 3 archers in the game right now, and the one that increases Pyro is trash because it's Amber. So not really a bow you want to use, because using this bow, you're using Amber, and I think that's a mistake. Let's go on to our Claymores, and I think by far the best Claymore in the game is the Debate Club, and that is my blunt conclusion that I've reached here. The Debate Club for the 3-star weapon gives you basically an extra attack. 120% attack damage is actually stronger than your regular attack, since most regular attacks hit for about 70% damage with a 2-hander. So this is going to be more than how much you regularly hit for. Use a skill, you start getting these procs. If you're using a character with a very short E cooldown like Diluc, if you got lucky and pulled him, then you're able to get these procs happening like crazy. It is a lot of damage. The next best one, I think, is going to be the one that increases the damage to Electro or Pyro. If you have a good Electro or Pyro character, Diluc Eraser immediately comes to mind. You can use this with them. It's got Elemental Mastery on it, so it's going to be for a character who wants to proc those elements a little bit more. This is a great secondary choice. The Skyrider Greatsword, you're going to see this, that increases damage with stacks. I think it's okay, but I said before that the attack percent boost is kind of a weak ability compared to especially stuff that just increases your attack by all your damage by 24%. The 24% calculation is going to happen at the end of the damage calculation, which is going to be more than having your base attack boosted by something like the Skyrider Greatsword. The big upside to the Skyrider Greatsword is that it has the physical damage bonus substat, so your regular attacks are going to be hitting for a lot more with the Skyrider Greatsword. And all the other ones, heals, trash. When you're below 70% health, it's trash. Trash all around. So, that's all the weapon types. We did swords, we did spears. Did I do spears? I don't think no, I did not do spears. Good. Glad I did a mental check. The spear of my recommendation is the white tassel. The white tassel has crit rate secondary. We already said that's amazing. It also increases all your normal attack damage by almost 50%. Great spear. Highly recommended. The black tassel gives you health, which not really a useful secondary stat, but it also increases damage against slimes, which there are a lot of slimes and a lot of points in this game, especially in the Spiral Abyss. There are tons of slimes. I personally don't find slimes be what takes me the longest. Those are usually Abyss mages that takes me the longest to get through because I don't have the right elemental type matchup. But the black tassel is one that people recommend. I don't recommend it as much. And the halberd, I also don't think is anywhere near as good as the white tassel. It increases damage once every 10 seconds. You can't reduce that 10 seconds. You just increase the damage that it deals. And the attack percent secondary stat is nowhere near as strong as the crit rate secondary stat. So easy recommendation for me to work on the white tassel for your spearmen. Those are my 3-star weapons, but I've got a little bit more for you. I also want to talk about, like I said, the different types of the craftable 4-star weapons and which one I think you should choose between each one. So between the Rancor and the Iron Sting, I recommend the Rancor. It's got physical bonus damage as a secondary and a stacking attack and defense boost that will make your character a little bit tankier while doing more damage. The Iron Sting increases your damage, but it requires you to use to deal elemental damage, which swordsmen have a more difficult time doing that consistent elemental damage unless you have a character who's able to use abilities or somehow gets a passive like Diluc or something, but not Diluc because this is a swordsman, not a two-hander, who actually deals elemental damage consistently. The Rancor is going to be better for most of the time. For the bows, it's an easy recommendation for me. The prototype Crescent I do not like. You have to hit an aim shot and then it gives you move speed and attack speed, whereas the compound bow is so much easier to use in combat. It's got physical damage bonus, which is great. Normal attack and aim shots just increase your attack and attack speed. So much easier to use than a Crescent. You don't have to aim it in order to get its bonus, and the secondary is awesome. Easy choice between which bow to make here for me, compound bow. For the two-hander, the Animus has got a great proc. It is a large amount of damage once every 15 seconds. If you're swapping your character out and you're not actually fighting with your Claymore user that often, this is very good. That's for a Claymore user that comes out in the field, uses their ability, smacks once or twice, and gets out of there. Great sword. If your Claymore user, however, is the character that is actually in combat more often, for example, if your Claymore user is Diluc or Razor, a character is actually staying out in the field and fighting, then the White Blind is the option, since this will give you a larger amount of damage over a longer period of time, but your character has to stay out for a longer period. So if your character's in and out, prototype Animus. If it's like Diluc or Razor, White Blind for the more consistent damage. For the Catalyst, easy choice, just like the bow. I do not like the prototype Malice. It gives you energy back, which might be useful if you want to build a team around energy regen, but I find that building a team around energy regen just is not as useful as just trying to build consistent damage in the first place. I've had some people theory crafting about maybe building energy regen around Venti and having permanent Venti ultimates just all over the place, but I think it's just too hard to do and not too inconsistent. The Mappa Mare gives you elemental mastery as a secondary whenever you do an elemental reaction, which as a caster is incredibly easy to do. Gives you an elemental damage bonus for 10 seconds. Stacks twice. It is basically 100% uptime with this, since as a caster you're going to be causing elemental reactions everywhere. Lots of good damage. Elemental mastery second, by far my choice. The prototype Grudge doesn't have a good secondary with the energy recharge. I don't like energy recharge as a stat. I'd rather just have an offensive stat, but the ability on it is much more consistent to trigger. After you use an elemental skill, increases your attack and normal and charge attack damage for 12 seconds. Very easy to trigger here on this one. The Crescent Pike has the better secondary with the physical damage bonus, but the effect on this is really inconsistent to use. You have to pick up an elemental particle, which are the little orbs that fly around that give your energy on your character back, in order to get the normal and charge damage increase for 5 seconds. So this spear, pretty inconsistent to use unless you're killing a lot of mobs and you're just assuming that these particles are flying into you all the time. I think the Grudge is just easier to get the effect off. You do have energy recharge on it, which is not as useful if you're out there in the thick of things, but if your character is there just to use their ultimate ability and do some damage, then the prototype Grudge definitely is my recommendation. Anyways, guys, those are some weapon choices I recommend for you. Hopefully you found this video useful. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing. If you have any other questions about weapons, I want to also one more time just finish up saying that I recommend working on 3-star weapons most of the time before 4-star weapons, not only because 3-star weapons are much cheaper to level up than a 4-star weapon, especially at the higher levels. There is a pretty large difference in how much you have to invest in a 3-star weapon versus a 4-star weapon, but having a max refinement 3-star weapon often is better than having a 1 refinement 4-star weapon. So unless that 4-star weapon has a really good ability that you really want, even at rank 1, a 3-star weapon with 5 rank refinement is the way to go. My name's Zeenigami. Thank you so much for watching, and y'all stay beautiful.